But first, I want to welcome a special guest, Linda Yamani, who helped us with naming the seven condors that we are releasing right now. And she also put together this wonderful art project, Condor Art. And she's here today to give a presentation, a short presentation. We'll get into a short presentation after that with Joe Burnett about the Condor release, and then we'll have questions at the end. So thanks again. And when ready, Linda, go ahead and I'll advance your slides.
Okay, go for it. So hello, everybody. I kind of had an idea after being involved in naming 5 of the 7 birds in this cohort that maybe it would be broadening for people to have a peek into the fact that California Indian people still kind of carry on this kind of traditional relationships with Condor. So I reached out to some of my California Indian artist friends and asking for who among them might have some art that features condors. And I have a little bit to share with you this evening. I think you'll enjoy it. I know you can read this, but maybe I'll just read it quickly for you and set the context. For thousands of years, California's first peoples have had both practical and supernatural, or you could think of it as spiritual, relationships with condor and other native wildlife species. Though times have changed, contemporary California Indian people still treasure those traditional relationships, and we keep them alive in various ways, including through art. In this slide presentation, 9 California Indian artists, both young and seasoned, since I'm one of the seasoned ones, I thought I would not call it old, share their artworks that feature the condor. Next slide, please. I know this is just a fairly small sampling, but the neat thing about it is it does kind of represent almost the full span of our state. And I took this map of California native tribes and kind of colored them in to give you a little bit of an idea, visual idea of what part of the state is being represented. And I'll be moving from north to south. And so the first artist will be up in the far northwest corner. She's Karuk Yurok and a member of the Hoopa tribe. But first, before we meet the artist, I kind of wanted to share something that I found to be pretty special and didn't really know about until recently. And in the next slide, we'll see this beautiful and very rare example of a condor skin cloak. And to my knowledge, this is the only one of its kind. Probably the only reason that we have it to learn from today is that it was collected here in California by Voznesensky in 1841, supposedly, up in the Sacramento area. And it today, along with, an amazing number of beautiful pieces of California Indian regalia, is in this museum, the Kunstkamera in St. Petersburg. The photos that I'll share with you, such as this one and the following, where you see the regalia pieces on these mannequins, are at the way that the museum in St. Petersburg has them displayed. And they do have an online, what would you call this? A book, well, now I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the word that I want, but you can view all of their California Indian collection online. So if that's of interest to you, as an aside to your condor passion, I just wanted to let you know that you can search for the Kunstkamera online and be able to find their catalog. That was the word I was not able to find a moment ago, and see more of these things from early California. Anyway, the black and white photo on the right is from another book that I will show you in a moment. And it's Treasures from Native California. Actually, there's something I wanted to read to you about this cloak. Sorry for showing you my papers. If you wanted to maybe, are you able to go backwards, Kelly, to the previous slide with the back arrow? It's just kind of a nicer one to look at while I read this. This condor skin cloak labeled Molok by Vozhnesensky was acquired somewhere in the Sacramento region. The cloak, which was made from the entire skin of a California condor, is the only such object known to exist. It measures about, sorry, I didn't have time to convert metric to our system, about 2.74 meters from wingtip to wingtip, and the pointers or wing spikes are approximately 60 centimeters in length. An unpeeled shoot, i.e. a little stick, was inserted into the base of the tail to keep the feathers kind of somewhat spread open. And if you're interested, you kind of look at it, you can see it in the black and white photo. Okay, the presence of some slightly whitish feathering on the wings indicates that the bird was an immature adult. So, all right, let me read a little bit more from the same book. If you don't mind, Kelly, could you go forward 2 slides?
Sure.
So this is a book that has this text, and one of the authors is a friend of mine, Craig Bates, and what he wrote about it that's included in this little excerpt here on screen. The condor was venerated throughout much of Central California, and the use of the skin of a condor in certain sacred dances was common among such people as the Patwin near Colusa, the Valley Nisenan at the villages of Pusuni and Olak near the present city of Sacramento, which Vozhnesensky visited, and among the Sierra Miwok. The Valley Nisenan term, Moloik, for the ceremony, suggests that Vozhnesensky may have collected the item from these people not far from Sutter's Fort, or was possibly given the condor pelt by Sutter himself. Okay, so we can move.
By the way, I just want to mention Jan Hamber is cited here in personal communication in the middle of the paragraph, and she's a longtime friend and collaborator from the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History.
Okay, so this is my friend Lynn Risling. As I mentioned earlier, she is Yurok Karuk, and she's a member of the Hupa tribe from the far northwestern corner of our state. And anyway, we can go ahead and advance forward and look at the condor painting that she shared with us,
Beautiful.
Which is really quite lovely. I would like to read to you the statement that she put together about this. This painting was inspired not only by this majestic bird, but also by the Yurok tribe's ongoing efforts with others to bring the California condor back to the tribe's ancestral territory. The condor is considered sacred to the Yurok and surrounding tribes, like the Karuk and Hupa. He is an important part of our world renewal ceremonies, and his feathers are worn in the dances. He helps bring healing and the restoring of balance to our world. And I was quite surprised to see that this painting is actually 4 feet by 5 feet in size. So I have not yet seen the original, but I'm sure it's really impressive at that size.
Lovely. I'm glad you brought up the Yurok tribe also, because many of our viewers here know that a condor release program is getting started up there, hopefully next summer. We've been collaborating with them and helping them out for a number of years. Please go on.
Good. I'm happy to hear about that. We can just skip forward since I already read her statement to you. So this is the second piece that Lynn shares with us. And I see that I included her statement here, but maybe I'll go ahead and read it anyway. The title, I didn't read the previous title. Would you like to hear it?
Yes.
It's in Karuk language. Oh, do you want to pop it back so I can see the
Yep.
title of the first one? Akviv kam tu ipak. So it's just kind of neat to hear different California languages. Anyway, if we can go back to this one. Tativ chanen ichayavan. So she writes, the condors, this is kind of repetitious, I guess, to what she said previously. But some of it she says in a slightly different way. He is an important part of our Fix the World ceremonies. In this painting, the condor wears regalia used in the white deerskin dance to remind us of our connection to heaven and earth. He helps send out songs and prayers to give thanks and to bring renewal and balance to our world.
Nice.
And that right there is a very good expression and window into the distant past. So we could move forward and meet the next artist. Muko, Plains Miwok artist Don Hankins. And then I was mistaken in which Miwok tribe he was from. So I colored in the Lake Miwok, and in fact, he's Plains Miwok. But as I write on the slide here, if it's just due east of the very northern tip of San Francisco Bay is where his territory is from. And if we move to the next slide, you can see his first artwork, which is kind of important to know that he painted this with ochre and charcoal pigments that he made himself. And then he used a duck fat as the binder. Let's see. Oh yeah, and he collected all these materials himself within the Plains Miwok territory. Miuko Uwali, Plains Miwok world, is how that translates. And he writes, the painting reflects upon the question, what was happening in indigenous villages the day before colonizers arrived? Here the Molokenu condor spirit is dancing a sacred dance upon the land, which has been freshly burned to care for it as a commitment to our ancestral obligations and unborn generations. Linked to those obligations are the radiating symbols for land, which are the lines, and water, which are the dots, as prayers cast to the directions. The horizon is filled with smoke that serves a purpose of cleansing the lands and its inhabitants while sheltering the surface waters and creating particulate to bring rain. The disconnect to these traditions began with the arrival of colonizers, and we currently grapple with reasserting our knowledge in fulfillment of our traditional obligations, our languages, and other elements of culture, including the production of traditional paints. Next slide is another artwork by Don. This one, pretty obviously, ink on paper. And he says about this one, after spending the summer and fall of 1998 working with condors in Southern California, I created this sketch to illustrate the motion and social behavior of the birds I worked with near the Chumash story sites around Lion Canyon. I reflect upon the spiritual power of these birds in this cultural landscape. I imagine the connection between past and future to see these birds without patagial tags used to identify the birds. That's all for that one. Now, next artist is Canyon Sayers Roods from Indian Canyon in Hollister, the hills outside of Hollister, actually. The Mutsun, she's Ohlone, Mutsun Ohlone, which is kind of around Hollister, Gilroy, San Juan Bautista, that area over there. So let me see what she has to say if we move to the next slide. I guess I already included it here. She says that this drawing was inspired by her intertribal involvement in ceremonies and peace and dignity journeys. So we can move to the next. Well, this is me. This would be me. Rimsun Ohlone from right here, Monterey area, which our language area included, or let me say it a different way. Our Rimsun language was spoken here in the Monterey area, Lower Carmel Valley, south along the coast, possibly, we're not certain, to the Little Sur River, thereabouts, and then also northward up to around Moss Landing, and actually probably to the Pajaro River. I mean, it's likely that the Pajaro was the boundary of languages. I guess I wanted to tell you I've spent the last 35 years or so researching and learning to make our nearly extinct basketry, and have now doubled the number of Ohlone baskets that exist in the world. And it was interesting while I was working on putting this together, which was all inspired by the fact of being invited to offer names for some of this cohort. It occurred to me that my cultural journey has been somewhat similar, I think, to the California condor story and its restoration. So we can move to the next slide. And this is my Wasak condor painting. And I'm actually just going to read to you the statement that I put together for it. And I wrote, as a California Indian basket weaver and artist, I've depicted Wasak soaring above our central coast, where the beauty of nature and our traditional cultures still thrive in this modern world. The swirling pattern comes from one of my baskets, and the shimmering abalone pendants that dangle from their tips were inspired by another. When given the chance, Condor simply lives, oblivious to our philosophies and intentions. But surely condors are a tribute to what is possible when people work together for good.
Beautiful.
So next slide. And I just wanted to show you some of my baskets, kind of as a chance to see where some of my inspirations came from. So in this one, you can kind of see in the background the swirling, kind of spiraling pattern, but in the other two feathered baskets, you can see the use of the abalone pendants dangling from our fancy baskets. In the next slide.
Well, and Linda, who's inside the basket there?
Oh, that's my grandma.
Ah, very nice.
And then I just included this one as a opportunity to kind of see those the swirling black pattern. So now this is my granddaughter. She spends a lot of time creating art and was interested in participating in this presentation of California Indian condor art. So, and I also thought that it would be nice to include some young people. So I asked her and two young Ohlone friends to participate. And I noticed that with in my granddaughter's case, it was really beyond just doing some artwork, but obviously she doesn't necessarily, being in the Bay Area, have a chance to see condors in everyday life. So she needed to look online to learn about them. And that was so cool because she learned more than just looking at a picture of a condor. She ended up learning about the captive breeding program and, you know, learning about this release. And so it was kind of multifaceted, that she could also be connected to our Ohlone culture in this context, but that she could learn something also so important, you know, about just about condors as wildlife and the efforts that people have gone through to make their existence possible today. So next slide shows her first piece, which this is what she says about it. I did 2 drawings of Condor. One is realistic and the other is from my imagination. For this one, I used chalk pastels, and this is the thing that I found remarkable. I was wondering what those fluffy feathers were down near her tail. Well, it turns out they're not feathers at all. She says, the condor is flying through a cloud. And she says, you can see the cloud by its tail. So, and then her second piece is her imagination piece, in which she calls it Queen of the Condors. I know you can see this, but I'll just go ahead and read it out loud instead of sitting here silently. I drew this make-believe imaginary drawing of a California condor with crayons. I call it the Queen of the Condors because of its beautiful giant black and white wings. Right now, this condor is in a secret place to stay safe and is sitting in a comfortable queen chair. She is staring at the delicious food in front of her. I hope the condors that are released survive and have a happy life like this Queen of the Condors that I drew. Now, Kelly, can you pipe in? Because when you saw this for the first time, you were kind of struck by the queen aspect, but I don't remember the story.
Oh, certainly. Well, this audience will almost certainly know Redwood Queen, and that's what I was struck by. Redwood Queen being the mother of Iniko that survived the wildfire, and her mate Kingpin that unfortunately was lost in the fire along with others. Yeah, so I'm sure there's a lot of people here that connect on that level too.
Right, and the other thing that struck me is that I had received my granddaughter's artwork before receiving the artwork images from my friend Lynn Risling, who we saw the first 2 pieces in this presentation. And Lynn's second piece shows Condor clearly in like a presentation or of royalty. And that's what very much struck me seeing the 2, though they originated, for different reasons. But my granddaughter, not knowing any of that, it's just interesting to me that she, was moved to present in this drawing Condor kind of in a very, regal sort of
regal
persona,
That's what I thought too, regal.
Yes.
Yeah, Linda, I think it's cool how, you're passing these traditions on to your granddaughter. And I saw the photo earlier, Kelly pointed it out, you pointed out your grandmother. So is this something she was able to pass on to you as well?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is, there's
survived them.
Yeah. But I had her, the reason that photo of my grandmother in that basket, that was my first traditional basket that I made out of the, local native plants in the techniques of our Rimsinoloni ancestors. And since my grandmother was already, had already passed, had she been alive, I would have given her that first basket. So instead, I kind of symbolically gave it to her by placing her picture in there. And it's been there, for however many years it's been now, probably 30 years now. So I kind of symbolically, gave her my first basket.
That's very nice. I hear some noise in the background. Just as a reminder, please mute if you haven't. So thanks for sharing that story, Linda. I really appreciate hearing that.
So we can move to the next slide, which is another young person. Her name is Iti Ishmen. She has a name that's almost bigger than herself, Itiishmen, which is a Rimson word that means new moon. Salamasina is a name from her mom, a Samoan name from her mom, and as is Tupuivao. Miranda is her father's last name. But anyway, as far as her Ohlone ancestry, it's also from here, the Rumsen. So she's a master tree climber. We can move to the next slide and see her art piece. So I know you can read it, but I'll go ahead and read it out. She said, when preparing to paint, I thought about how much the lives of condors have changed, like our native people, from freedom to near death, captivity, and finally back to freedom. That's what I painted. And I love her painting. So the next artist is her brother, also a tree climber, but not climbing in this picture. Kaleni, Eva Tupuivao Miranda. And we can see his amazing, I think, artwork next. This image is what came to me when I thought about condors. Relationships. Relationships between condors and humans, condors and their release, condors and their home. It's really great. Next artist, I actually don't know this man, but he's a cousin of another basket weaver artist friend of mine. And his name is, oops.
Oh, sorry.
Back
Sorry
up a little
that.
bit. Okay. Christopher Guy. Oh, you're giving away the, okay. I hope you didn't see that because I wanted to surprise you all. Anyway, Christopher Diaz. So let's look at the first slide. It's a powwow dance shawl with condor. And I was a little surprised that a California Indian person, he's Chumash, but I noticed that he's also Tohono O'odham, and which is Arizona tribe. And I admit I don't know what Mayo is, but that sort of maybe more explained to me his connection to powwow. And then I'll read to you what he wrote. He says, "This condor shawl was one of the first I made. I grew up on the powwow circuit, selling our crafts and jewelry with my grandparents. I noticed that California Indians are very underrepresented and decided to honor our tribes and ask our women to dance with our symbols on their backs." So now if you could go to the next slide, this is, ooh, I was very excited when I saw these slides because this is the same shawl from the front with the woman, you know, with her arms in front of her. And he writes, "Condor goes back to the beginning of our people. This shawl is foam green, chosen to represent the mixture of our ocean and our forest. The condor represents our ancestors and takes up the whole shawl. So when it's worn, it embraces the woman. And when she opens her arms, everyone can watch our ancestors fly." It's just so beautiful, as is the shawl. So next slide, this is our last artist. This is El Frank Manriquez, and she is Tongva and Hashmem. So Tongva is also called Gabrieleno, and really is Los Angeles area, what we're talking about. Hashmem is kind of right next door, I think. And let me stop to remember. Luiseño is the other term that's used. And I'm not sure what modern city or mission. San Luis Rey, I believe. Anyway, so next slide, you'll see one of her paintings of Condor, which in her, let's see, I think this is Luiseño language, the title, Yunga Vaiwut, and that's the Luiseño word for condor. And she has a short little statement about this. "She flies the highest, is the strongest, and can find things in people because she sees everything." The title is in the Ahashmem, yes, Luiseño language. So that's about the end. If you wanted to move to the very last slide, just kind of a little collage of all of the pieces we saw tonight. And I don't know, I guess I just wanted to say I hope that you've all enjoyed kind of this little peek into the world of California Indian culture and the various relationships that we've always had with condors, and also the other wild creatures that share this place we all call home.
Thank you so much, Linda. I wish we could give applause right now. I'm sure everyone is. It was so nice to see your presentation, and I really, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all the time and energy that you put into this. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Also, just to mention, this presentation can also be found on our website right off of the home page. So anyway, this is a good time to turn to Joe Burnett and give us an update or recap.
Kelly?
Yeah.
If I could just interject, I just want Linda to know that the chat line is just absolutely overfilled, flowing with positive comments. And I just want her to know how everyone is appreciating her presentation.
Spotlighted here. Well, welcome back, everyone. I feel like I just saw everybody not too long ago. How this morning was pretty awesome. Wow, the weather was beautiful. And yeah, we were as excited as you were with watching what unfolded. Yeah, so I have I was going to give a brief update on how the release birds are doing, and then I was going to get into talking about Iniko and actually 1033, the other chick that we evacuated this year, and kind of wrap things up. I'll go ahead and share my screen here, get my presentation going. See that? Kelly, can everyone see that?
I can.
Oh, good. Okay. All righty. Well, welcome back, and thank you, Linda, for that awesome presentation. Yeah, I'm always blown away by the artwork that is, especially the local California artwork related to California condors and Native Americans. It's pretty, as a biologist, I can definitely identify with it. It definitely captures the magic that it's hard to put into words to people. When you see a condor, I think there's just a connection you immediately have with this species when you see them out in the wild. And a lot of wildlife, you know, and see a whale breach for the first time or see a condor come flying over your head, it definitely captures it. But yeah, thank you so much for that. And thank you for helping name our birds this year and getting that all going. Yeah, so today was exciting. We had our the start of our condor releases. Again, we were originally planning to do 3 today, or actually the last 3 days we were planning to release, but the weather obviously played a role in delaying things, which is okay. You know, good things. It's good to wait and have the right weather conditions, as you saw today for releasing. You saw how well it went. So it paid off. The patience paid off, and we did receive word this morning we're going to receive more release birds. So we decided to add 4 into the mix this morning because the second release in early December, we have it currently scheduled for December 5th. And that will also be streamed live, and there'll be a way to log on to that. We'll have a Zoom going as well, and just cross our fingers the weather it holds up on that day. But yeah, today was pretty awesome. You know, we opened the doors. We were anticipating it as much as everyone else, and yeah. So Teach was the first one to go out, 995, and I don't know if you noticed, but he initially went out, and it wasn't exactly a great welcome. Those 2 younger birds, 912 and 828, gave him a little tough love. But it was great to watch how he rose to the occasion. He backed off, gave the other birds space, and then eased his way back in. And then later on in the day, when the real dominant bird showed up, Mike's bird 566, that was the real testament, and he's feeding right alongside him. So it was pretty incredible to watch it unfold. That was a really perfect scenario. And I don't know if you all remember this morning, I was saying I was communicating with the field crew and they were in the blind. So this is a photo of what they were seeing today. The crew that were actually inside the blind, they actually have cables and pulleys they operate from inside to open the doors out front. So I was texting with them. Fortunately, they have a cell phone signal up there, and we can communicate via text messages. And they were giving me an idea of what was going on. But this is their view of the action, and I think it's really valuable to see that. So, and we also had a couple biologists stationed around that were keeping an eye on things. But later in the day, it was really cool. We got to see Murish take his first flight, and it was actually I grabbed these little sequence of photos of him jumping out the door, and this is the final shot that I love. You can see the white underwing patches. They're not as, I don't know if you noticed on these younger birds, they have the white underwing patch isn't as white. It's a little more light. And as they get older, that will become a pure white. As you saw in some of the artwork Linda shared, the real stark white underwing patch, triangular underwing patch they get as adults. But right now it's a little more light, but it's a distinct identifying feature for condors. When you're out in the wild looking at condors, you can tell a younger bird really quickly by how light the triangle is underneath the wing. So anyway, this was yours taking off. This is what it's all about, taking his first flight. And here's kind of a synopsis of where everybody ended up. Murish and Peachy, Condors 957 and 966, they each made short flights. Murish hung out on the slope for a little while and fed with the other birds. 966, Peachy took off and had made a really nice flight and landed in a pine tree a few hundred yards down from the release site, but in view of the release site, and then just hung out in that tree the rest of the day. The crew had a really good view of Peachy, and I think it was more of a sensory overload. Peachy was just taking it all in, and I'm guessing tomorrow we'll see that bird again down around the area with the other birds. And then Murish ended up in a tree right behind the release pen, out of our view, but really close, high up in the top, and he was perched with some other birds. So that was actually really cool. And those two will actually be spending their very first night in the wild. So I'm sure they're going to be looking, they'll wish they had eyes on the back of their head, but they're going to definitely have a different view of the world outside the pen for the first time. So that's actually pretty cool. The more interesting story is that Teach, Condor 995, everyone saw him leave the release pen. He was the first one out. He went out and fed with everyone, took his lumps at the beginning, but bounced right back. And then, by the end of the day, he's feeding with all the top birds. So we were just blown away. What's interesting is Teach, as we watched all day, I don't know if y'all watched, but 968, which is Wasik, never left the pen, was right in the doorway. I thought for sure Wasik was going to take off. But, Condor time is on a different, I don't think the bird just wasn't ready, which is fine. And again, we want them to go on their own accord. But I thought it was really cool how Teach came back tonight and ended up back in the pen with Wasik, and they ended up perching together. And we went ahead and just closed the door for the night just to make sure they were safe. And then in the morning, we'll reopen the door, and I'm fairly sure Teach is going to show Wasik the way out. So tune in again tomorrow. The cam will be streaming live. The crew probably will open the doors up a little earlier. I'm guessing around 7-ish in the morning. So for those of you watching at home, just tune in and watch it unfold. And it was, but I thought that was a really cool moment today to talk about that social bond, how these birds watch out for each other. I thought that was a really cool behavior, really admirable behavior. And I thought it was great that Teach came back and hung out with his buddy, and they're going to spend the night together, and then I'm pretty almost positive they'll go out together tomorrow. So that's the latest on the releases. And again, we'll keep you updated on the releases. We'll post updates, and there's also the comment thread on explore.org. We'll provide updates there. But yeah, again, thanks everyone for tuning in earlier. That was pretty exciting. This release, live streaming release concept came together kind of just within the last few weeks. And you know, and the camera, like this camera we had, was supplied by explore.org, and the live feed that we all had was, you know, the actual internet connection was provided by Ranch Wi-Fi, and without those two entities, none of this would have ever happened. So, you know, we can't go without thanking them for bringing this out to the world. So, pretty cool. And, you know, it was great. Like this photo today just really captures it of Teach here hanging out by the pool, sunning. I mean, look how confident and free. I mean, it's got to be such an awesome feeling. I mean, I think he was just taking it all in. And I was really amazed at how well that bird did today. So more condors are on their way. That's the latest news. We're working with Lighthawk pilots, and they're going to be flying the birds down from Boise down to Paso Robles on 11/21, which is Saturday. So we're excited for that. The actual number of birds is depending on how well they can gather them up in the pen that the Peregrine Fund operates. So we're looking at probably 4 to 6 birds coming down, and half of those will go to San Simeon, half will go to Pinnacles. And earlier, actually last week, the end of last week, Pinnacles actually released their first 2 birds. And I didn't mention the stud book, so there was a male and a female, 961 and 986. And so if you go to condorspotter.com, those birds will now be listed in there, and there's a good chance you might see those birds in a couple months if you go visit Pinnacles National Park and go on a hike around the high peaks or some of the popular condor hikes around there. And yeah, so that's a really cool development happening. So we could potentially this year in Central California release, you know, right now we're at 9, we could end up with up to 15 birds to release this year, which would be really great considering the big setback we had this year with losing 9 free-flying birds and 2 nestlings from the Dolan fire. So that would be a great way to bounce back. And again, our wild fledges are out there doing well. Despite the fire, we've had half of our wild fledges of our 8 actually fledge and are doing well in the wild. 2 others, which were, again, just want to mention Ranch Wi-Fi again and Explore. Definitely get a shout out to those guys. But yeah, back to the nestlings. Obviously, everyone was aware of the evacuation of Iniko. You know, Iniko, we all followed on the S-cam this year from hatch to all through the different growth stages through the fire, and then elated after we found out Iniko survived the fire. And then, of course, Ninja showed up right before Iniko was supposed to fledge and attacked Iniko. And Iniko ended up on the ground with a bad limp. So we decided that it was time to intervene and go help Iniko. And we did. We went and successfully were able to capture him. And the photo on the right is Darren placing Iniko in our transport kennel. And then, of course, the feat of getting Iniko out safely in this really steep, recently burned terrain was probably the hardest part. And again, it took us a while, but it was effort well done. Big kudos to the crew on that one. And now Iniko is at LA Zoo. The day we evacuated Iniko, she went straight to LA Zoo. Upon arrival, she was examined. She was immediately determined to be in pretty darn good health condition. The best news we had was the limp that she had wasn't a break or any kind of sprain. It was what they felt was a muscle bruise or a strain, a muscle strain. And since then, she has healed up and no longer has this limp and is recovering really well. You can imagine Iniko went through some heavy-duty trauma. I mean, just the fact that she survived that fire, she lost her dad. She went through this evacuation. She got attacked by Ninja, And then even though our efforts to evacuate her were in goodwill, she didn't probably see it that way. She probably didn't know what was going on. So she went through a lot, and considering that, we knew her behavior would not be perfect at the start. But the great news is LA Zoo has a facility set up to help birds transition, and they do this for their pre-release birds, the birds that are raised in captivity. So they basically use those same techniques to introduce Iniko into a group of birds in a large flight pen. So what they did is, after she got a clean bill of health, they stuck her, this is normally a nest box. And that window there, you can see it's covered right at this point. And when they think she's ready, she's able to look out that window and see the other birds in the pen. And condors are highly social, so she immediately started gravitating her attention, peering out that window. And when they saw that she behaviorally was showing the right signs, they let the door up, and she went right on out. And this is here's a great video I'll play real quick. And she adjusted really quickly. Here's a great shot of her sunning. Again, I was talking about this earlier today. I think it's one of the most stoic poses of a condor, probably one of the most famous poses you'll see when they sun. And she looks pretty darn happy to me. And this would be her home temporarily for the next year until she's ready to go out with other release birds. And she will likely end up with just like the birds we released today, in a group like that, immersed in a group like that, which is what we want. And she'll go out just similar today in the same sort of fashion, most likely at San Simeon. So we know there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But just to wrap up on Niko's status, she's in good health, no injuries or illness. She's now residing in a large flight pen at the LA Zoo. She's with other condors. She's with condors her same age, and actually there's some mentor birds in there. They always keep mentor adult age birds in these pens to help basically keep order with the younger birds and enforce that hierarchy that is so important to condor social life. These birds really need it, especially these young birds. And again, she'll be released next fall in San Simeon with other pre-release condors. So how will Iniko react when she sees Redwood Queen again? I'm sure they're going to know who each other are. But again, I think Redwood Queen at that point could also be raising another chick, and she's. I'm sure they're always going to have a connection. And then again, Iniko's going to be starting her life in the wild and making her own way. So I think either way, it's going to be a great reunion. And what exactly happens, is really up to the birds. But it's always, I think it'd be I think they definitely will recognize each other. We also want to give an update on Chick 1033. As you guys remember, the fire after it burned through Big Sur, it moved east towards another one of our nest sites on the east side of the Coast Range. And this nest is in a cliff. And this is on the right photo. This is 1033 side the cave. These photos taken by Gavin Edmonds, National Park and Pinnacles National Park biologist who works with the Condor Project, and he's an incredible photographer. And he took this photo, and then on the left, that's a photo by one of our crew, and that's a Lake Welsh cat, another pinnacle biologist. Expert handled, and they were the ones that rappelled down to the cave and removed 1033 because we knew the fire was coming. And the reports from the firefighters were that if we did not get this chick out, this area was going to burn. And we didn't want to take the chance with 1033, knowing what we had seen happen in Big Sur. So we took the chance to get her out ahead of time. Again, she was taken to LA Zoo and evaluated. They did find that she had a pre-existing injury, and they're still working on it, trying to figure out what's going on. But the good news is it's slowly improving. We're not sure exactly how the injury happened. It's something with her spine, and it was, we believe, probably happened when she was fending off the attack of another animal. It could have been an eagle attack or anything that happened while we weren't watching. And but anyway, these condors are pretty resilient. The fact that 1033 is young is really on her side. they tend to heal up, recover from these type of injuries much faster. And again, it's just day to day. We get updates from the veterinary staff at LA Zoo. They're the experts, and this bird is in really good hands. So we all have our hopes up that 1033 will also be in that release batch next year with Iniko and the others, and ideally get either released at San Simeon or over at Pinnacles. But again, this 1033 has a little ways to go in terms of being cleared to get on that path to release. So just keep your fingers crossed. And I think knowing where she's at, she's got the best shot, of recovery. And last but not least, the rebuild update. Kelly mentioned in the last couple of days how we've raised over $500,000 for our rebuild effort, and that's thanks to all of you and all of our major donors. We've received government assistance and grants, and can't say enough how much that's going to push the needle forward and get us going. And it's helped us start the rebuild process. We've got up to the sanctuary. We've been able to clear the road and get the road repaired. It was heavily damaged during the fire. We still have a large number of hazardous trees that need to be removed. That's up next on our list. And then right alongside that, removing all the old burned structures, the hazardous materials involved there. That'd be next. And, we've consulted with an architect. We have a project manager online, and that will begin the process of coming up with designs for the rebuild structures for the actual structures we're going to rebuild. So we hope if everything goes to plan and permitting and all that, we can start construction as soon as next summer. So that would be really awesome. And we're just looking at this winter. We know after fires, the soils are incredibly unstable, and the intensity of burn in our canyon, we're remaining apprehensive, and we're going to be really pay close attention to our road this winter. So we don't want to plan anything too intensive based on the fact that we know we're going to have some major slides or runoff and potential damage to our roads. So we're working closely with Blaze Engineering, a local engineering group that they helped cleared our road initially, and they're going to be on call to help us throughout the winter. So right now it's just we just hoping for, obviously rain is always good, but hopefully not a lot all at once, because that's when you get the real damage done. And I think that's about it. Kelly, do you want to add anything more?
I think this is great. Let's see from Mike about a few questions, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Joe. A few comments from the chat referring to the rescue of Iniko, and I just want to share that with you. As someone who's not on the field crew, I'm just very impressed with the deliberation and care that you took just keeping Iniko steady on that walk out of the wilderness, and very challenging, and I'm just very impressed with how that was done. Not an easy thing, and I think a lot of people are feeling the same way. Excellent job. A couple of people are wanting to know about the pending release date for Iniko, fall of 2021. Who decides that release date, and is it possible that Iniko could be released earlier? If Iniko seems to be okay, why not move up the release? Why is it scheduled for 2021 fall?
That's a great question, and it's really what it's working towards what's best. Personally, I'd love to get Iniko back out, but we found releasing birds at the age she's at right now is not ideal, and this is we're assuming too that Redwood Queen would pick up where she left off. It's not a guarantee that she would take care of Iniko. We'd rather give Iniko the best shot at surviving. And what we found over the years is that releasing at a 1.5 years age, even a wild fledged bird, a wild raised bird is really in the best interest of the bird, and it gives that bird the best chance. And the fact that we can get this bird in a release group, to get Iniko, get her in a little tight group, that's also a huge advantage. So we're basically doing everything we can to give her the best shot. And in the bigger picture, it seems like a long way away, November 2021. But when you're talking about a bird that can live 40 to 50 years in the wild, it's really a drop in the bucket. And again, and the reason we go with fall is because the summer is, in California, in our area, in Central California, are very hot. And releasing birds at that time of year can be a little bit dangerous. They can get stuck, potentially get in an area and dehydrate really quickly. So we tend to wait till after we like to get the first rain, wait until after the first rain that we can start releasing. So we know the temperatures aren't going to be extreme. And we get some, really hot temperatures in these different microclimates around where we release birds. So we just want to, hedge our bets. But that's really the approach. It's really all around the most opportune time to release these birds, and we wouldn't want to release her alone.
Breaking news here.
So a lot really goes into that decision, and it is all for the better chance of survival for the bird long term. Julia wants to know, how uncommon is it for a released bird to go back into the pen? Do you see that very often?
No, we haven't, but it has happened before. That's what we want. It is a safe place for them. We want them to, especially after their first day out. It is, it wasn't too surprising, but it was surprising to me to see the first bird to go out was the bird to come back in. So, and to just see how well Teach did out there with interacting with all those. That was a dynamic social group right there. And Teach really fared very well. It was a little rocky at the beginning, but overall a slam dunk. And then interesting that Teach came back in with Wasik. I just think that really speaks to these birds, and that's really what we want. We don't want to disrupt any of that. We want them to lean on each other, and I think tomorrow it's going to be cool to watch. I really think Teach is going to be the lead Wasik out, and that's the way you want it. You want these guys to be able to have allies out there and friends to lean on, once they go out. So, I thought it was just an interesting, we have seen that before, but never at this level, especially with the camera. Again, going back, we haven't had live streaming on releases, so this is just another really a window into condor behavior. We're all learning together.
Yes, it's so interesting, so exciting, and I can't wait to watch tomorrow. Are there any other chicks in nests right now as we speak, or have they all fledged, or have all their fates been determined currently?
Yes, they've all fledged. So that's great news. And again, we've got the 2 in captivity that will hopefully get released, come 2021. And so that's 6 of the 8 that look like they can make it, that will make it. So, the fledged bird, the birds the other 4 that have fledged in the wild, they still have a tough road ahead of them. But the benefit is they have mom and dad helping them out, and they'll spend the next year really taking baby steps, just having mom and dad usher them around, introduce them to the flock, show them where to feed. It's a really slow process. And, back to what we were discussing about Iniko and waiting for Iniko to be 1.5 years, that's when Iniko would have left Redwood Queen. It would have been a year of really being watched. And the fact that Kingpin isn't around, Iniko wouldn't have the attention really that a young condor needs. It would only have one parent. And, I think Redwood Queen could probably pull it off, but it's not ideal by any means, and especially when you have these other dominant birds that are territorial and can potentially attack Iniko. You really need both parents there to back these chicks up. So, so in the bigger picture of things, I think it's really important that we hang on to that 1.5 years point to let her go.
Yeah. Elena wants to know, how do you place carcasses in that pen without disturbing the birds. I know everyone's seen the sanctuary cam where the field crew goes out in the dead of night just to make sure that the condors aren't associating the food with the humans. Are you able to take that level of precaution to this release pen in San Simeon, with this pen being a little smaller?
Yeah, and yeah, we do everything at night, and we do everything behind walls that are block our view of the birds. And again, the fact that with these release birds, we put they only need one carcass every week, so it's a low disturbance rate even when we do go in. And then when we go in, we have a way to go in to block our view. And again, we do it at night, and it's we try to channel ninja skills there to be as stealth as possible. So it's part of condor work. Condor being a condor biologist, it's one of the more cryptic parts of our job is the night work, putting out dead carcasses out in the middle of the wilderness. And but at the same time, it's definitely necessary, and it pays big dividend.
Yeah. Kudos to the crew for all that they
Yes.
do at all hours of the day, really. And during the fire, as a result of the fire, a couple of birds, I guess, were found with signs of burn marks. And I believe at least one bird, 901 scabbers, was or is being treated for burns. Do you have an update on that bird? Anything that you can share with the viewers?
Yeah, I literally received an update from one of the keepers at LA Zoo, Mike Clark. I received an update probably about 45 minutes ago. So 901 we noticed had some sloughing of the skin around the legs, and the head looked like it was peeling. And so Pinnacles was fortunate and able to capture that bird. And upon closer examination, they immediately noticed this bird had suffered severe burns and was recovering on its own, because the bird this was almost 2 months after the fire. So the bird was obviously coping with it. But again, in the best interest of the bird, we said, well, let's take it to LA Zoo and let the veterinarians look at it. And they were able to assess some of the injuries. But still, again, it's still too early to say, but the 901 himself is doing great. He's increased in weight. One of the big issues he was having, his lower beak was damaged as well in the fire. Some of these birds that survived the fire but were burned, you could tell the fire had burned underneath them wherever they were perched, and super hot air had come up under them. Not enough to kill them, but enough to, and not singe their feathers, but enough to start to burn their skin, basically almost like a melting effect. And so their skin on their legs on these birds that did survive is beginning to slough, this outer layer. And then underneath the beak, the lower part of the beak were damaged on some of the birds, and some of the birds' necks. And then also the condors all have a crop, on the keel, and some of the birds actually have burns on their crop. And so the 901 had most of his damage was on his lower beak and his legs. So those are all being treated, and it's really day to day. But his issue was he was having trouble eating because his lower beak, he wasn't able to tear meat off carcasses efficiently. So at the zoo, they've been feeding him through a food chute. They give him these digestible chunks that are bite-sized chunks, basically. And his weight has jumped up immediately, and the healthier weight you have, the better off you are, the better you'll heal. So his healing rate has really gone up, and they're really hoping his lower beak will regenerate. Similar to when you're nailed, it's similar to a toenail, or when it breaks, it grows back. So this is just something we've never seen before in condor. So the vets are kind of just giving us a day-to-day update. So we're optimistic that this bird can heal. But yeah, there's still some collateral damage from the fire. These birds that survived, we've noted that at least 4 of the birds that survived that night have been documented with burns. So where there was definitely some extra, other damage done besides the birds that were actually likely perished in the fire. So we do feel we got, while the losses were high, they could have been higher. By everyone that was watching the cam that afternoon saw, I think I counted 28 condors that day. And we're pretty convinced all 28 were in that area. And so, worst case scenario, we could have lost 28 birds. So to lose 9 was devastating, but it's kind of like the glass half empty, first half full. It potentially could have been worse. So anyway, 901, just keep them in your thoughts. And he is a wild fledged bird, so we're really hoping he makes it. But right now, he's in good health, just fighting through these burns, just healing up from these burns. And in time will tell,
Yes, we're certainly thankful for all of the birds that survived the fire. We know that Iniko's release date our release season has been set. You also shared an update on 1033, and a lot of people are appreciative of that news, even though we don't know everything at this point, and things. We'll just have to see how things work out. What we do know is that all of these birds are in the best possible care, and so the best possible outcome can be had now that they are receiving that care. But a specific question, and maybe I'll make this question a little bit more general, but for a bird that was rescued this season, let's say that bird is not ready for release by next fall, like Iniko. Can that bird later on be released? Is there some cutoff date where all of a sudden that bird is just no longer able to be released? Is there a question of imprinting? What are the chances if time drags on in this care?
Yeah, that's one of the realities of when stuff like this happens. Amazingly, the zoos do an incredible job at keeping these birds isolated at their facility, especially LA Zoo. And they have these huge aviaries, and they're able to keep these birds isolated. And we've had birds as old as 5-6 years old we've released, and they've done fine. So it's really case by case. It depends on if a bird's going through a real severe treatment and it's being handled a lot. Sometimes it takes a little while for that potential any kind of imprinting to wear off. But the awesome thing about condors, and I've noticed with their behavior, is if you leave them alone, if they get through the treatment, yeah, they've been handled a lot, just to basically keep them healthy. If you give them a period of time with no handling and they're around other condors, they get wild really quick. And it's so instinctual. They're more driven to be wild than they are to ever be tame. So I always remind folks of that. You're fighting thousands of years of genetics in a species that their instincts are to go out and do what they're designed to do. So we've had really good luck with releasing birds that have been in captivity for extended periods. And, even a lot of these wild birds that were brought in, the 27 that were brought in 1987, I mean, these birds were older, and they were brought in captive bred as part of the captive breeding program for, some of these birds were over 15 years and then re-released back in the wild. And when they were re-released, they literally picked up 15 years later exactly where they left off when they were captured from the wild. They went right back to their old territory, right back to their old feeding grounds. They didn't miss a beat. They weren't tame. They knew exactly their role out there. So I think that's a testament to the species, and and it's nice to know that as a biologist and the folks at LA Zoo that are working with the birds. But we work with them a lot, making sure we can keep the disturbance down, keep these birds as wild as possible. And but it is a challenge, but it is we can release them at older age. So worst case, if we had to hold Iniko or 1033 an extra year, that'd be fine. As long as they're it's really the keepers watching them and keeping them with other birds, and they tend to do just great.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, Joe. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. Joe and/or Kelly, as you sign off, could you just quickly go over the upcoming Zoom opportunities? Certainly on explore.org, they can monitor the San Simeon pen again, but I believe December 5th is the next release, and I'll let you guys take it from here.
Oh, I'll just finish with that. Yeah, please join us for the next release on December 5th. We're going to do it the same way that we did it today, and hopefully the weather will be a little bit more on our side. So we'll have the Zoom chat going, and we'll have the streaming camera. And in the meantime, we'll have the streaming camera going as long as again, weather is on our side, it will be working. And we hope you stay connected with us. Before I completely sign off, though, I want to thank Joe for that presentation, and also our special guest, Linda Yamani, from our local area here, and sharing the Condor art, and just having just a wonderful day in general. I thought this was a great way to end. So thank you, everyone, for being.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.